What would you say and what would you do if we all woke up one morning and Raila Odinga said, Edwin Sifuna tosha? Yeah, and this happened long before the anticipated 2027 general elections. Let us just say in extraordinary circumstances. And then 10 days later, after Raila says Edwin Sifuna tosha, Bwana Sifuna becomes the President of the Republic of Kenya. What would you say? Now just hold on to that thought. We'll come back to it in a minute. A few hours ago, one of you shot me an email, a super fascinating email, the long and short of which they were asking me to say something about the very crazy political developments, very recent, in another African country called Senegal. Especially because they see a lot of similarities between what is currently happening in Kenya and what has happened in Senegal. What? But one phrase in his email really stood out and caught my attention. It was the phrase, propelled by circumstances. What he's saying in the email is that the current president, the youngest ever in the history of that country, and in the history of most of Africa to become president, was propelled into the presidency by circumstances. And these circumstances are very similar to the circumstances in Kenya. And of course he is spot on. Politics is always propelled by circumstances. Despite the way most of us Kenyans look at politics and analyze it, we always forget that everything in this life is propelled by circumstances. And I immediately thought about my special report, Highly Sensitive, where I go behind the scenes to analyze chini ya maji moves by 5 men, 1 woman, and another party, that are going to decide the destiny of Kenya very shortly. Because these characters, some of whom Kenyans are ignoring at the moment, have a chance, a possibility of being propelled by circumstances into being our next president, or playing a major role in deciding who our next president is, long before the year 2027, I can assure you. But let us start this story at the beginning, so that it all adds up and makes sense. Now, there is a Cinderella political story that has just unfolded in the country called Senegal, where a young man, barely 44 years, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, or President Faye, has recently moved into the official residence of the President of Senegal, the State House. And this super fascinating story gets even more interesting when you realize that President Faye had been in jail for exactly 11 months, was released on March 14th this year, 2024, and 10 days later, catch this one, 10 short days later, was duly elected as president. And the drama does not even stop there. The president of Senegal has 2 first ladies. Now, many Africans are polygamous. We have had presidents with many wives, like former South African President Jacob Zuma. Even here in Kenya, our third president, Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki, had 2 wives. Even neighboring president, I know many people don't know this one, even neighboring president, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of Uganda, has 2 wives, the 2 first families. But never before have we had a president introduce 2 first ladies. Marie Hon Faye is the first wife, the wife to President Faye for 15 years. They have 4 children. She is a Christian. Okay? The second wife, Absa Faye, is a Muslim. They've been together 1 year. He got married to her barely a year ago, very shortly before he was incarcerated. The president himself is a Muslim. And so in Senegal, they're already having discussions. Yeah, somebody says, you know, the first lady yesterday did this, 1, 2, 3. And then somebody responds, which one? Which first lady? Because there are 2. What? Anyway, let's stick to the politics. Because if you allow me to go in that direction, this video is going to be 2 hours long. Okay? And we don't want that. Propelled by circumstances. You know, when you keep on saying on this channel that the route of presidency will never reach anywhere near the year 2027, I am not being driven by emotions in saying that. I am not even making a prophecy or prediction. No. All I'm doing in making that statement is looking at the circumstances which clearly show us that they'll propel exactly what I'm saying will happen. It's as simple as that. Now, the situation in Senegal is extremely similar to the situation in Kenya. In fact, too similar. The long-suffering people of Senegal were just fed up. The long-suffering people of Kenya are more than fed up. And in Senegal, in this environment where people were fed up, certain circumstances came into play that propelled this 44-year-old President Faye into power. And in Senegal, while the people were completely fed up, the circumstances suddenly changed. And the result is this political Cinderella story that we're talking about. In fact, those circumstances are changing right across the continent, not only in Kenya. Okay? So dictators beware. And I'll tell you in a minute exactly what I'm talking about. But another quick similarity is that Senegal also has a long-suffering opposition leader who has been fighting for the people for a very long time, just like Raila Odinga. And the Wasungu did not want this man, for obvious reasons. And so he has been frustrated every step of the way. In fact, he was also in jail and released at the same time as current President Faye on 14th March this year. And Bwana Sonko made many spirited attempts to vie for the presidency, but he was disqualified. And so Bwana Sonko decided the Secretary General of his political party, which was banned, tosha. Funny question. In other words, he said, Bwana Faye, tosha. And that was enough to win him the presidency. Just like here in Kenya, if Raila can wake up and say, Edwin Sifuna, tosha. And the Wasungu tried many things. First of all, they tried to postpone the elections. But the courts ruled against that. But don't be fooled, this is Africa. It is the people who decided first. There were massive protests countrywide. And the rest is history. Now, let's talk about these circumstances that changed in Senegal and that are changing right across Africa. And these changing circumstances, trust me, are deadly to any dictator on the continent of Africa. Now, in case you didn't know, there is a mounting very serious problem in the West. And that problem is illegal immigrants. In the space of just a few short months recently, over 1,000 Senegalese drowned in the high seas trying to cross over as immigrants illegally on very small shaky boats across the ocean. And very sadly, nowadays, that is not breaking news. And just last year, the number of illegal immigrants flooding into the West broke records. And the situation is just getting worse. Bottom line, this is becoming a major crisis in the West. Now just be patient. You'll understand shortly why this is an explosive issue that I believe is what tilted the scales and changed the circumstances in Senegal to allow that Cinderella story. And the same will be replicated, I predict, in many countries across Africa very shortly. Now, granted, illegal immigrants have been a problem for a very long time. Very long time. But the important thing to note is that it has now become a crisis. Don't also forget that the prosperity of the past in the West is rapidly vanishing. And of course what that means is that their systems are already strained. Without illegal immigrants, very much strained. But a very important take-home point here is that some of those powerful Western nations are beginning to appreciate that actually they are the main cause of this problem. You go to Africa and you make deals that impoverish the citizens of that country. For example, it has recently been revealed that in the oil and gas contracts signed and sealed by the previous Senegalese government, Senegal was getting only 10%. You heard me right? Only 10% of the total revenue coming out of the resources in their country. True story. And actually, that is not even breaking news. That happens all over Africa. And then these powers also interfere with the politics. They decide we don't want so and so. We don't want Sonko, Osman, ever to be president of Senegal. That can never happen. And so what happens? A puppet is elected. A puppet who is there to enrich and make profits for themselves and their families and friends. And the long and short of it is that you make life unbearable for the citizens of that country. And so, what do you expect? They'll do everything in their power to migrate into your country illegally. That's really what it is. The circumstances in Senegal that propelled this Cinderella political story, I am convinced, emerged from the realization by some powerful Western forces that if they did not fix things in Senegal and fix them fast, their home countries, already under incredible strain, would soon be overrun by illegal immigrants. Because at the rate at which they are arriving and at the rate at which numbers are growing, within a very short time, the situation would become completely unmanageable. Chaos. And so somebody decided free and fair elections. But this man Sonko is not going to run. And so Sonko said, Faye tosha. Just like the way Raila can say today, Edwin Sifuna tosha. By the way, Edwin Sifuna is 41 years old. For those who want to know, you know. And this is very obvious. One should be very careful. Because this Vasungu, they can change just like that. Pop! Wamebadilika. And they leave you high and dry. Of course, I'm talking about you, who were depending on them for everything. Everything you have is because of them, not because of the citizens of your country. Okay? Now, granted, people are not leaving Kenya in such high numbers as they are in Senegal. At least not yet. But Kenyans are leaving en masse for the West, especially since the election, or is it selection, of Ruto as president of Kenya. And a rapidly growing number of these people leaving Kenya are living as illegal immigrants, which is hardly surprising because desperation in Kenya is growing in leaps and bounds. Bottom line, it is just a matter of time. But there are many other factors in play that would greatly disadvantage Western countries if things in Kenya are not stable, if things in Kenya are run down, if the economy in Kenya is suffering because of a few individuals. There are so many disadvantages to the West. Bottom line, it is only a matter of time before the Vasungu realize that it is in their best interests for Kenya to have a free, fair and verifiable election with no hidden servers with hidden results. It is just a matter of time. By the way, there's another factor that came into play in Senegal that is very important. You see, international politics has changed a great deal. Before we used to have very few players, but now we have many more players in the game. Before we used to have a dominant superpower which had allies, a few allies here and there. The situation today, whether you want to believe it or not, is that that superpower is not where it was before. In fact, now we have other nations contesting the superpower status of that nation. And that has brought a situation in Africa, increasingly, where countries have options. They can talk to that superpower or they can talk to somebody else. Allow me to leave it at that. Now, it is super fascinating that my latest highly sensitive report about these individuals and the clandestine moves, chini ya maji, actually highlights this Senegalese Cinderella political story being replayed in the country called Kenya. Now you can see details on your screens right now. For only Kenya shillings 3,999 or only $31, you can have this valuable special report in your hands. Pop! Just like that. I have a few spots left which I want to fill up quickly, and therefore for the next 24 hours, if you order this latest special report of mine, I will send you the previous two free of charge, completely free. You heard me right? You get this one, you'll get the other previous two which you may have missed, or maybe you only missed one, but you'll still get those two completely free. So you get 3 in total. Please go for it. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.